and welcome back to JazzBiz Buzz. As promised, we are here in Karachi to explore new industries and talk to new CEOs. So today, as our first guest, we have Mr. Amir, who is the CEO of Bank Al Islami, and we are going to be engaging in conversation with him today. Assalamu alaikum ji, क्या हाल है आपके?
Walaikum assalam, I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Good to know. थोड़ा सा I'll start with your personal professional journey. How did you begin your career and how did you end up in banking?
I think venturing into banking was primarily linked to venturing into Islamic banking. Otherwise, I would not have joined banking industry had it not been Islamic banking. So my passion for Islamic banking motivated me to explore this industry. And I came to the industry in 2006. So it was little more than nascent. There was approximately 31 branches which Mizan Bank had at that point in time. So I joined Mizan Bank at that point in time, and that was my start with the banking industry around, we would say, like 14, 15 years ago approximately.
Well, you are mentioning a lot about Islamic banking. So I think a lot of people who actually do have bank accounts in other conventional banking as well. There's always this one question: कि ऐसा क्या है अलग? What is the difference between the conventional banking and what new concept is Islamic banking bringing? And then there's also some people who say that Islamic banking is not necessarily Islamic banking. So how shine some light over that?
So the fundamental thing which is prohibited in Islam, and interestingly, it is prohibited in Judaism and in Christianity as well, which is interest. Interest is actually when you pay or return extra money on borrowed money. So it's actually increase in money, or when you pay any extra amount on a loan amount. So that is what exactly is interest. What is allowed is there is a financial or economic concept of cost of capital. When we talk about factor of production, we talk about cost of capital. So the cost of capital concept, when it goes into returning money on money, is interest, so which is not allowed. But for example, capital has many forms. For example, if there is plant and machinery and you rent that plant and machinery, or the office in which we are sitting, probably it's on rent, so paying rent for that office space, so it's a capital asset, and paying rent on it is allowed in Islam pretty much. Same ways, doing a partnership like any company like the Bank Islami, or even there are many other companies which are listed on stock exchange, putting money into their equity is like participation into the business, which is in Arabic you call musharaka, or in Urdu you call sharakat dari, a partnership. So that is all allowed. So Islamic financing has borrowed those principles which are per se allowed in business, which includes the concept of renting out the assets, which includes your immovable property and your plant and machinery and your vehicles, and then participating in equity on the basis of profit and loss sharing. And the third one is the concept of trade-based transactions, whereby you can very easily see if you go to a market, you will find retail shops and wholesale shops. So a wholesaler buy goods and then sell it to a retailer on credit, very commonly. And when the retailer sells those goods at a profit margin, he pays the money to the wholesaler, and wholesaler actually has bought the goods at even a lesser price. So the wholesaler makes money. So the making money by trading of goods, whether you sell goods on credit or cash, it's okay in Islam, and in okay as far as all commercial types of business are concerned. So these three concepts have been adopted by Islamic banking to earn return on capital. So earning return on capital in the form of return on money is per se not allowed. So that's the fundamental difference. So as a result of that, it happens very occasionally that on the face of it, you are unable to find a difference. So both are return on capital. But in one case, conventional banks charges return on capital on the loan amount lent by the bank, which is not allowed, because there is a formula for calculating interest, it continues. In Islamic finance, although one can say the rent also continues, yes, but in a trade transaction, when you lock your profit, it fixes. In an equity transaction, you have a risk of loss as well. Even in a capital transaction, when you rent out a capital asset, if for some reason that capital asset is destroyed, it's the cost to the owner of the asset, which is Islamic bank in this case. So there are very fine, I would say, differences for an outsider, but as soon as you start entering into that arena, and you read Islamic finance, then you will notice that there are real differences between conventional financing and Islamic financing.
There are a lot of multinationals who came to Pakistan and then they left, and then there are so many banks who have been made into Pakistan right from the very beginning, and they are still becoming, they're still making a lot of profits, and they have become giant financial institutions of Pakistan. But unfortunately, the unbanked population of Pakistan is still on the higher side, and even the move towards the financial fold is really slow. So I feel like there's a difference. I mean, there's a lag somewhere. Is it because of the awareness? I mean, why do you think is the larger proportion of Pakistan's population still unbanked?
So I think there are some structural or fundamental reasons. So if you look at the World Bank definition for the poverty, people living below the poverty line or who are part of the lower income group, so 39% as per the latest data of the population is earning less than $3.2 per day. So which is a very small amount for a family to survive. So as a result of that, the population which is either below the poverty line or the population which is very close to the poverty line, it's very difficult for them to use formal banking channels because they don't have enough money to save. But this population sometimes end up borrowing from informal sectors, and those informal sectors charge very heavy interest when they lend to these people who are living very close to the poverty line or below poverty line. So as a result of that, say 40% of the population is out. Rest is 60%. Out of 60%, 22, 23 or 24% of the population is banked in Pakistan, because we have some 57, 58 million bank accounts right now. So there is a delta of roughly say 35%, which has where there is definitely a potential for banks to reach and serve. And I think in that area, the branchless banking and the institutions like JazzCash and certain others are doing an exceptionally good job, because they have enabled people which are closer to the poverty line to also become a bank's customer and use banking channels at least for transferring money or to borrow money from these microfinance banks. So for a country like us, where per capita GDP is low, where the population living below poverty line is very high, so I think branchless banking or microfinance is the game through which you can do more financial inclusion. Before we had this branchless banking concept or mobile wallet bank concept, the banking penetration was very, very low. But after this, I think the banking penetration has improved. It will continue to improve over a period of time. And there is a definite need for these commercial banks like us and the microfinance banks like Jazz or Mobilink Microfinance Bank, when they enter into joint ventures, strategic alliance, some kind of support arrangements to each other, then we can improve that penetration.
नामवर बैंक्स के हमारे पास इस तरह के केसेस आते हैं कि एटीएम के थेफ्ट्स हो गए या डेटा लीक हो गया एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. सो व्हाट हाउ डू यू डील विद दिस? मतलब आप किस तरह डेटा सिक्योरिटी को मेंटेन करना व्हेन यू आर डीलिंग विद सो मच सेंसिटिव डेटा ऑफ द कस्टमर्स? हाउ डू यू एक्चुअली प्रिवेंट ब्रीचेस एंड हाउ डू यू पुट अप फायरवॉल्स टू एक्सपेल थ्रेट्स लाइक दिस?
राइट, देखिए सिचुएशन इस तरह हो गई है कि ऑलवेज कंट्रोल एंड कन्वीनियंस हैव एन इनवर्स रिलेशनशिप. अगर आप चाहते हैं कि चीज़ बहुत आसान हो जाए तो फिर उस पर कंट्रोल्स कम हो जाएंगे, और चीज़ पे आप कंट्रोल्स बढ़ा देंगे तो थोड़ी सी मुश्किल हो जाएगी. सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन दिस डिजिटल एज, पीपल नीड लॉट ऑफ कन्वीनियंस. दे जस्ट वांट टू डू अ ट्रांजैक्शन एट अ क्लिक ऑफ अ बटन, कि जी मैं अपने फेसबुक से ही पेमेंट कर दूं, प्रॉब्ली मुझे अपने बैंक अकाउंट में लॉगिन भी ना करना पड़े, मुझे कोई 2 फैक्टर ऑथेंटिकेशन की ज़रूरत भी ना पड़े. सो एज यू रिमूव दोज कंट्रोल्स, देन द रिस्क इंक्रीजेज. सो द राइट मॉडल फॉर डूइंग दैट इज़ यू सेट फाइनेंशियल थ्रेशहोल्ड्स कि ये 2-2.5 हज़ार रुपये की ट्रांजैक्शन है, इस पे तो सिक्योरिटी लेवल बहुत कम है, बट इफ़ द ट्रांजैक्शन क्रॉसेज दैट फाइनेंशियल थ्रेशहोल्ड, मे बी दैट कैन बी सेट बाय द कस्टमर इटसेल्फ. राइट नाउ कस्टमर को ऑप्शन नहीं दिया है, बैंक्स ने खुद ही ये सेट किए हुए. So above that, there should be significant controls built around that. And if, as far as if I talk about my bank, So we have invested heavily on information security and cyber security and digital security, and for that there are very, very interesting and advanced tools which are available. So it's not just no more limited to firewalls. There are advanced threat protection systems which are very intelligent, which detects transactions which are unusual and sandbox them and block them.
While we are talking about data security and customer data breach prevention, a lot of companies are moving from personalized data centers to cloud technology. And that is actually even more dangerous, because if your cloud is not locally hosted, your data could actually be exposed to more threats. So आपकी जो रेगुलेशन है पाकिस्तान के अंदर स्टेट बैंक की, वो भी ये कहती है कि आप अभी उसको क्लाउड के ऊपर डेटा को ना शिफ्ट करें, बट आई एम श्योर दैट फॉर द बैंक्स इट्स अ हेवी अमाउंट ऑफ कैपेक्स दैट यू हैव टू स्पेंड ऑन डेटा सेंटर्स एंड ऑल ऑफ दीज इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम्स एंड सिक्योरिटीज एंड व्हाट नॉट. तो अभी आपके ख्याल में ये जो भी केस चल रहा है, केस तो नहीं है, सच रिक्वेस्ट चल रही हैं विद द रेगुलेशन कि हम इसको लोकली होस्टेड क्लाउड के ऊपर इसको अगर हम मूव कर सकें, तो डू यू थिंक कि उस पर भी आप इसी तरीके से चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस रख सकेंगे, या अगर आप किसी फॉर एग्जांपल अमेज़ॉन या किसी और के उसके ऊपर होस्ट करते हैं, तो डू यू थिंक कि इट वुड स्टिल बी ओके फॉर यू गाइस टू डू दैट?
देखिए, थिंग्स आर वेरी सिंपल एक्चुअली. क्लाउड सोचने से लगता है कि यार दिस समथिंग विच इज समवेयर इन द स्काईज. क्लाउड इज नथिंग. फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ टुडे HBL, I ask HBL to host my softwares and my databases in their data center, it's a cloud for me. For HBL, who is hosting its own data there, it's a data center owned by proprietary data center. So keeping your softwares or your data or your databases in a third party data center is like a cloud. So when you talk about local clouds, then there are a lot of companies who have come up. Now it's about there are different types of certification for your data center, which includes both information security and cyber security related certification and business continuity related certification. So if the cloud or a third party data center, because every cloud is a third party data center, has those certifications done by authentic companies, audit firms, so you can go there and host your data. It's as good as hosting your data at your end. Now the only difference will be that there is a need for data security or data encryption at rest and while it's moving from your place of business to the data center. So there are tools available to encrypt that data, and if you do that encryption, you are pretty much secure. So I don't see any issue in that, but definitely there are certain political angles or geopolitical angles to it, because if you host your data cross-border, for example, if we decide today to host our data into a country which is not friendly to us, then it can be a problem, because if they cut your communication, your data will remain there. So this is a separate issue, which is not an IT issue, which is a geopolitical issue. So if you segregate the geopolitical, for example, if I want to host my data in Islamabad while I'm sitting in Karachi in Jazz data center, so it's a cloud for me, but there is no geopolitical security issue if the data center in Islamabad. If that data center is in a country which is not a friendly country, despite it being a Jazz data center, then it's a geopolitical issue. So these are two issues. One is information security, which can easily be managed. Other one is geopolitical security issue, which cannot be easily managed, because you cannot become a friend of another country only because you want to use their cloud. So it's simple.
Absolutely. Neji, that's on point completely. So I think that's all the questions that we had for you today. Thank you so much for coming over here and engaging in conversation with us. It was a pleasure, very knowledgeable. I'm sure this conversation, as long as it may be, it would still go on, and we can still go on into so many, technicalities of banking and whatnot, but it will still remain interesting.
Thank you so much for inviting. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much. So we will be back with another episode of Jazz Biz Buzz soon enough, so stay tuned.
Jazz Business, designed to help you grow.